Hello, my name is Colin Quigley, and for this presentation, I'll be going over my flashlight technical design. The high concept of my technical design is a flashlight the player can use which not only emits light, but also causes an enemy to stop movement and have a particle effect triggered only when the flashlight is hitting the enemy. I came up with this idea to help the players from our capstone project get a visual cue to know when their flashlight was actively affected the enemy in game. Since our game is horror themed and based off SCPs, I felt it would be a fun and creative bonus feature. Since the flashlight doesn't technically damage them and only slows them down, I suggested we add something that has a little more flair. The breakdown of my flashlight is that when the player presses the on button, left mouse click, they turn on the flashlight, emitting a luminous cone of light. If the player presses the button again, it will turn the light off. The light will not technically damage the enemy, but will send an alert to the target, allowing the particle effects to be triggered. Once the light is not hitting the enemy, the particle effect will be turned off and stopped. The main variables used in the system are the left mouse click boolean for if the flashlight is on, an integer for if the enemy is being hit by the light, and a vector for the light distance. The communication the player receives from this feature is that when the light is hitting the enemy, they will stop moving and showcase a particle effect. For this, I needed to use Unreal 5.2 and work on the blueprints for the enemy and the flashlight. Since I was using a pre-built enemy with animations and a walk cycle for my capstone project, I only needed to configure the particle effect reaction when the light hits it. The flashlight also needed to have slight alterations to make sure the hit was registered when the enemy when turned on. For the technical design, I only needed a 3D walking animation for the enemy to halt, the enemy reacting to the flashlight hitting it, a particle effect, and a flashlight system for the light and damage to be sent for the triggers. To validate the system works, all I need to do is to make sure the flashlight still produces light, stop the enemy from moving, and have the correct particle effect triggered depending on if the light was hitting the enemy or if it wasn't. For this system, I was thankfully able to grab a pre-built flashlight, 3D player model, and 3D enemy with different animations for my testing, all from my capstone project, Necnophobia. For this system, to implement my changes, I had to update both blueprints for the enemy and flashlights. You can see images for parts of the blueprints below with some of the changes I made for this feature. The left is for the enemy blueprints to display the chosen particle effect when receiving damage from the flashlight. The right is a flashlight blueprint triggering the damage event on an enemy when the light hits it. These are two references I use to get more familiar with the flashlight and making visual effects on an enemy when taking damage. Here is a video showcasing the feature and engine. The enemy is the chair slightly off in the distance, and this is a modified flashlight I'll be picking up to use. Once I can get it up, there we go. So the enemy has a random cycle of movement, so it isn't always chasing the player. But you can still see once the light is turned on, the flame effects go off. You're going to see in a second that while the flashlight is off, the monster starts chasing. Once the light's on, stops chasing, stops moving, and the particle effect is triggered. Light goes off, particle effect goes away. Monster is able to move again, starts chasing. Lights on, flames on, no movement. You can also check that when the light is barely not touching, they're still on, the enemy is still able to move. It only affects once the cone of light is hitting the chair. Instantaneously once the light is touching it. Off and on, does it see the flame turn off and on? And regular light doesn't affect it, it is only from the flashlight. You can also see I make it where the light barely touches and triggers to stop it. And that is the conclusion of my presentation. I'd like to thank you for your time and watching this video. If you have any questions, please leave a comment below. Bye.